40 years, 4 decades. Two men who once defined boxing history, now separated by silence, time, and memories no one could forget. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, rivals in the ring, legends outside of it. And on this day, the world was about to witness a moment that nobody expected. It all started quietly. Cameras were rolling, but the atmosphere was tense. People whispered. Staff held their breath. No one knew what would happen when these two icons finally faced each other after decades apart. The history between them wasn't just fights. It was personal. The fight of the century, the Thrilla in Manila, the countless punches, the victories, the losses, all of it had shaped their lives, and the rivalry had left invisible scars. Then, the doors opened. Muhammad Ali walked in calm, confident. The same charisma that had once mesmerized the world still radiated from him, even after all these years. The room went silent. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. Moments later, Joe Frazier entered, strong, reserved, eyes scanning the room until they met Ali's. The crowd felt the tension immediately. Decades of rivalry, pride, and respect condensed into one single glance. It was a stare that carried years of unspoken words, memories, and emotion. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The air was thick with anticipation. Some fans held back tears. Cameras clicked in rapid succession, trying to capture history in motion. Then, the first sign. A subtle nod. A slight smile. The kind of gesture that says more than any words ever could. The audience realized this was more than a handshake. This was a bridge across 40 years. You could feel it in the room. Something monumental was about to unfold. Something that would remind the world that even the fiercest rivals can find respect, and even decades of silence can be broken. Before we continue, comment below who's your favorite boxing legend, Muhammad Ali or Joe Frazier. And stay with us, because the next moments are the emotional reunion everyone missed, a story that will stay with you forever. To understand the power of this moment, we need to go back decades. The 1970s. The world watched as Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier stepped into the ring for what would become some of the most legendary fights in history. The fight of the century in 1971, the Thrilla in Manila in 1975. Every punch, every jab, every uppercut carried more than just physical strength. It carried pride, emotion, and the weight of their rivalry. Ali, with his unmatched speed, charisma, and bold personality, was a showman in every sense. He taunted, he danced, he captivated audiences worldwide. Frazier, on the other hand, was relentless. A powerhouse with a heart as fierce as his punches. In the ring, they were perfect opposites. Outside it, their rivalry had simmered for decades, often fueled by misunderstandings, media frenzy, and public opinion. And yet, life moved on. Fans aged, fights became memories, and the two legends drifted into separate worlds. Interviews hinted at lingering tension. People wondered, would they ever reconcile? Would there ever be a moment of closure? For 40 years, the answer seemed no. But this day was different. A small hall, minimal staff, cameras rolling discreetly. Only a handful of people knew that Ali and Frazier would finally face each other again. The organizers understood the gravity of what they were about to capture. Not just a meeting, but a historic reconciliation. The room buzzed with anticipation. Reporters whispered among themselves, will it be awkward? Emotional, explosive. Some fans speculated. Others stayed silent, sensing the weight of history about to unfold. Then Muhammad Ali entered. The room froze. Even after decades, his presence was magnetic. His eyes scanned the room, calm yet alert. There was no need for grand gestures. The aura of a legend was enough. The crowd instinctively respected the silence, realizing that something extraordinary was about to happen. Moments later, Joe Frazier entered, strong, composed, cautious. His eyes locked onto Ali's. For a split second, it was as if time itself stopped. Decades of rivalry, respect, tension, and pride condensed into a single glance. Every person in the room felt the electricity in the air. Ali took a few steps forward. Frazier stayed back, cautious, uncertain. The whispers grew louder. Cameras focused. Staff held their breath. It wasn't about the fans, the media, or the spectacle anymore. It was about two men, two legends, facing a lifetime of unspoken words. Ali extended his hand, a small gesture but one heavy with meaning. Frazier hesitated. The room waited silent. Would he take it? Could 40 years of pride be put aside in a single moment? And just like that, a subtle nod, a quiet smile, a handshake that spoke louder than any headline. The moment the world had been waiting for quietly began, not with words, but with recognition and respect. Before we move to the next part, the real confrontation of emotion, comment below if you could witness one historic reunion. Who would it be? And stay tuned, because the story is just getting started. The room was electric. You could feel history pressing down on every person inside. Cameras clicked, whispers floated, but the silence between Ali and Frazier was louder than anything else. 40 years of rivalry, unspoken grudges, and mutual respect now converged in one small hall. Every step Ali took toward Frazier seemed measured, calm, deliberate. Every inch of distance they closed carried decades of unspoken emotion. Frazier stood there, strong yet hesitant. He wasn't the brash fighter in the ring anymore, but the weight of the past made his movements cautious. Every memory of those historic fights flashed in his mind, the punches he landed, the punches he took, the victories, the defeats. And now, facing Ali, all of that history felt tangible, almost physical. Ali extended his hand. It was a simple gesture, but in that room, it was monumental. For decades, people had speculated if these two would ever reconcile. Some thought it impossible. Others hoped it would happen someday. And here it was, happening quietly, without fanfare, yet more powerful than any media spectacle. For a moment, nothing happened. Frazier's eyes studied Ali's face. Could he trust this moment? Could 40 years of silence be bridged by a single handshake? The room held its collective breath, knowing that the answer would define history. Then, slowly, Frazier moved. Their hands met. The handshake was firm, respectful, almost ceremonial. But even as their palms pressed together, the tension didn't vanish immediately. 40 years of rivalry don't dissolve in a single motion. Their eyes met, searching, questioning, reconciling. "You've grown," Frazier finally said, his voice low, almost unrecognizable to those who had only heard it in interviews decades ago. "And you've stayed strong," Ali replied softly, a hint of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The room seemed to exhale, cameras rolled. Reporters leaned forward, knowing they were witnessing a rare, historic moment. Some fans held back tears. Others whispered prayers, thanking the universe that these two legends were finally together, not in conflict, but in peace. Ali took a step closer. Frazier mirrored him, a natural instinct from years of fighting together, yet now turned into respect rather than aggression. Their conversation was quiet, almost inaudible to the rest of the room, but every word carried the weight of a lifetime apologies, acknowledgments, reflections on the past, and perhaps even forgiveness. The audience could only watch in awe as the tension slowly melted. Ali laughed softly at a memory. Frazier chuckled, shaking his head. There was a brief silence, a pause that said more than any words could. Decades of competition, rivalry, and pride had transformed into understanding and mutual admiration. Then came the hug. It was unexpected, but natural. A full embrace that symbolized reconciliation, respect, and humanity. The audience erupted. Some cried openly, overcome by the sheer emotion of the moment. Others whispered to their neighbors, unable to articulate the significance of what they had just witnessed. For Ali and Frazier, it was more than a handshake or a hug. It was closure. It was recognition that their battles, while legendary, were not the sum of their lives. It was proof that even the fiercest rivals could find common ground when the time was right. And yet, even in this reunion, there was an unspoken tension, a reminder that history cannot be erased. The fight in the ring, the words exchanged, the victories and losses, they were part of who they were. But now, in this room, they chose respect over pride, connection over conflict, and legacy over rivalry. The audience, captivated, could feel the gravity of every glance, every nod, every subtle movement. This was more than a reunion. It was a lesson, a reminder that time, humility, and understanding can heal wounds that no fight ever could. As the room continued to buzz, Ali and Frazier stepped back slightly, smiles lingering, eyes still locked. The world outside would never truly understand the depth of this moment, not just two legends meeting again, but two men finally acknowledging the shared history that had shaped them both. The conflict had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something far more powerful: mutual respect, reconciliation, and a silent understanding that would last a lifetime. The moment Ali and Frazier embraced, the room seemed to hold its breath. 40 years of rivalry, tension, and pride had condensed into a single, transformative gesture. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered frantically, and fans in the room struggled to process what they were witnessing. This was more than a reunion, it was history unfolding before their eyes. For Ali and Frazier, the hug wasn't just physical. It carried decades of emotion. The laughter, the tears, the exhaustion, the pain and the glory, all wrapped into a few fleeting seconds. When they finally pulled back, the subtle glint in Ali's eyes hinted at nostalgia, relief, and even humility. Frazier, his strong jaw softened by emotion, nodded slowly. A small smile spread across his face as if saying, "We made it this far together, in a way." The crowd, initially stunned, began to react. Some clutched their chests, tears streaming down their faces. An elderly fan muttered, almost to themselves, "I never thought I'd see this day in my lifetime." Another whispered to a friend, "It's like watching history forgive itself." Cameras captured every nuanced gesture, the way Ali adjusted Frazier's shoulder, the careful glance of mutual recognition, the quiet yet powerful energy of reconciliation. Even the media was caught off guard. Reporters fumbled for words, trying to describe the unspoken story happening right before them. "It's more than a handshake," one said. "It's a lifetime of battles being acknowledged, healed, and respected." Others recorded in silence, knowing that any commentary would fall short of the depth of the moment. A small group of younger fans, unfamiliar with the full history, watched intently. One whispered, "Why are they crying? I don't even know them." An older fan shook their head, replying, "Because this isn't just about them. It's about every fight, every rivalry, every person who ever needed closure." The two legends began to talk quietly, almost inaudibly. Their words were soft, punctuated by laughter and occasional serious nods. They shared memories from the ring, the adrenaline, the strategy, the heartbreak of losses and the thrill of victories. Each anecdote was tempered with respect and humor, a stark contrast to the fierce energy of their youth. Outside the immediate circle, the energy of the room shifted. Some staff and attendees recorded the moment on their phones, eager to capture the event for posterity. Others just stared, absorbing the gravity without needing to film it. The silence between conversations was just as meaningful as the dialogue, a collective understanding that this wasn't ordinary. An elderly reporter scribbled furiously, noting the gestures, expressions, and body language, realizing that someday, historians would analyze this moment as more than a reunion, as a symbol of forgiveness, humanity, and respect. Ali and Frazier began to walk around the room, interacting with fans cautiously yet warmly. Their smiles were gentle, their nods deliberate. Every movement communicated the message: time doesn't erase battles, but it can transform them. People whispered, "This is what true sportsmanship looks like." At one point, Ali paused, looking directly at a young fan in the front row. "Remember," he said quietly, "it's not about who wins or loses. It's about respect for the opponent, for the sport, and for yourself." Frazier nodded beside him, adding, "And sometimes that respect takes years to show, but it's never too late." As the room slowly exhaled, a profound realization settled over everyone. This was more than a meeting of two champions. It was a reunion of two souls who had walked parallel paths of glory, conflict, and learning, finally meeting at a place of mutual understanding. The reaction outside the room began almost instantly. Clips leaked online. Social media lit up. Fans who had followed the rivalry for decades shared videos with captions like, "Ali and Frazier finally together." Respect wins. And even for those who hadn't known the full story, the emotion was universal. Two humans, once divided, had come together to teach the world a lesson far bigger than any fight in the ring. By the end of the hour, Ali and Frazier were standing side by side, waving softly to the crowd, a living testament to resilience, humility, and reconciliation. No words could fully capture what had transpired. Only the expressions, the glances, and the shared energy between them. It was the reaction of the world compressed into one intimate room. The reunion had begun with conflict, but the reaction made it legendary, proving that some moments transcend sports, headlines, and even time itself. The room was still buzzing from the reaction. Cameras flashed incessantly, capturing every glance, every subtle gesture, every flicker of emotion on the faces of Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. The audience could feel that this was more than a simple reunion. It was the culmination of decades of rivalry, respect, and unspoken words finally finding a voice. Ali and Frazier had started talking quietly, sharing memories, joking softly, and occasionally laughing at moments that only the two of them could truly understand. Every word, every nod, every smile carried weight. The crowd realized that what they were witnessing was not just two sports legends meeting again, but two men reconciling a lifetime of history. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Ali, with his ever-present charisma, leaned closer to Frazier and whispered something just out of earshot of the audience. Frazier's eyes widened slightly, and then he laughed, a warm, genuine laugh that seemed to echo through the room. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The tension that had lingered for decades seemed to dissolve, replaced with a palpable sense of relief and joy. A young fan in the audience whispered to their neighbor, "What did he say?" The older fan replied softly, "It doesn't matter. It's clear they understand each other now. That's all that counts." Ali and Frazier turned toward the crowd, and Ali raised his hand. "I came here to deposit memories," he said with a smile, "and to find peace after 40 years. Frazier chuckled and added, "Sometimes it takes a lifetime to see the bigger picture. Today we see it together." At that moment, the reality hit the audience. These men, once rivals in the fiercest battles boxing has ever known, had found a common ground that transcended the ring. There were no taunts, no prideful speeches, no bitterness, only mutual respect and acknowledgement of the paths they had walked. Reporters quickly began asking questions, but Ali and Frazier gently declined to answer in detail. Their expressions, their gestures, and the quiet connection between them said more than words ever could. One photographer later described it as a silent conversation that carried the weight of 40 years. The crowd, sensing the enormity of the moment, erupted in applause. Some wept openly. Others captured the reunion on video, knowing that they were witnessing something far more significant than any championship belt or fight result. This was history in its most human form, two men acknowledging each other, recognizing each other, and embracing the passage of time with humility. Ali gestured to Frazier and said, "The world may remember our fights, but I will remember this moment, and I hope you will too." Frazier nodded, his eyes misty, and replied, "I will, Ali, I will." Suddenly, Ali extended his arm to a young fan near the front. "Remember," he said, "life isn't about who wins or loses in the moment. It's about respect, forgiveness, and finding peace." Frazier added quietly, "Even your fiercest rival can become a teacher, a friend, and a reminder of what really matters." The audience was spellbound. Cameras, once frantic and chaotic, now captured quiet moments, Ali and Frazier standing side by side, smiling, hands resting on each other's shoulders. The energy in the room was almost spiritual. Every attendee felt the gravity of what had happened, a legendary rivalry transformed into mutual respect. For decades, fans had speculated about whether these two men would ever reconcile. For decades, journalists had asked the impossible question: could Ali and Frazier ever truly respect each other? And now the answer was clear: yes. Respect had triumphed over pride, humanity had triumphed over rivalry, and reconciliation had triumphed over decades of silence. As Ali and Frazier prepared to leave, they paused one last time for the cameras. No words were necessary. Their faces, calm yet expressive, told the story history had been made, and the world had witnessed it. The reunion, the laughter, the subtle gestures, the quiet conversations, all of it revealed something timeless, that even the fiercest battles can lead to understanding, and even the longest silence can end in harmony. Outside the room, social media began to explode. Clips of the reunion spread instantly. Fans wrote, "Ali and Frazier finally together. Respect wins over rivalry." Comment sections filled with admiration, reflection, and gratitude. This was no longer just a sports story, it had become a life lesson for the world. And in that small hall, amidst cameras, whispers, and applause, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier quietly proved that time, respect, and forgiveness are more powerful than any fight in the ring. The room was still vibrating with the echoes of applause and murmurs of awe. But for Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, the moment had shifted inward. No longer was it about the cameras, the crowd, or the history that the world had watched for decades. It was about two men finally finding closure after a lifetime shaped by rivalry, respect, and the unspoken weight of their shared past. Ali looked at Frazier with a quiet intensity. There was no bravado in his gaze, no theatrical flourish, just sincerity. "Joe," he said softly, "for 40 years we fought like gladiators. The world watched every punch, every jab, every moment of pride. But today we fight no one but ourselves." Frazier's eyes glistened. The memories of their legendary battles flashed in his mind, the pain, the sweat, the exhaustion, the glory, and the countless nights replaying every fight in his head. But now, decades later, all of it seemed to fade into perspective. He nodded slowly, a small smile breaking through the years of tension. "Ali, I've carried our fights with me for a lifetime. But this is the real victory." For the audience, it was breathtaking. Cameras captured the subtle gestures, Ali lightly resting a hand on Frazier's shoulder, Frazier's nod of acknowledgement, the brief moment when their eyes locked and spoke volumes without a single word. It wasn't just a reunion anymore, it was a lesson in humility, respect, and reconciliation. Staff and fans whispered, realizing that they were witnessing the transformation of a rivalry into something far greater than either man could have imagined. The energy shifted from awe to inspiration. People began to reflect on their own lives, wondering what grudges they might let go of, what relationships they could mend. Ali and Frazier began walking through the room, acknowledging individuals, sharing small smiles and exchanging quiet laughs. Each gesture was deliberate, a testament to the patient's maturity and wisdom they had gained over 40 years. They spoke softly about moments from their past fights, the strategy, the intensity, the passion, but now with humor and understanding rather than anger or pride. Ali paused near a young fan in the front row, leaning down slightly. "Remember," he said, "it's not about how hard you hit or how many fights you win. Life is about respect, courage, and knowing when to let go." Frazier nodded beside him, adding, "And forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strength. The strongest people I know are the ones who can say, 'I respect you,' even if we were enemies." The crowd was captivated. Some were taking notes, others were filming, but many were simply watching in awe, understanding that this reunion transcended sports. It was a demonstration of humanity at its finest. Then, in a quiet gesture that was almost ceremonial, Ali and Frazier clasped hands again, longer this time, holding the moment for themselves and for everyone in the room. No cameras were necessary. No words could describe the weight of it. Decades of rivalry, decades of pride, had culminated in this simple act of mutual recognition. Reporters tried to approach, eager for sound bites, but Ali and Frazier simply smiled and shook their heads. There was nothing to explain, the moment spoke for itself. The world outside, however, was already catching wind. Social media began to buzz, clips circulated, and commentary exploded with admiration. Headlines declared, Ali and Frazier rivals turned legends of respect. Fans around the globe were moved, inspired by the profound lesson these two men had offered. As the reunion drew to a close, Ali turned to Frazier one last time. "Joe, the ring will always be part of our story. But today, we write the chapter that really matters, one of understanding, respect, and peace." Frazier smiled, a mixture of relief and contentment shining through. "Ali, this is more than a reunion. It's a legacy." The room fell silent as both men stood side by side, waving gently to the audience. The applause was heartfelt, long, and sincere. People knew that they had just witnessed the resolution of a rivalry that defined an era. For Ali and Frazier, the moment was complete. Decades of tension, competition, and unspoken emotions had transformed into closure, friendship, and shared respect. They had stepped out of the shadows of their past conflicts and into the light of reconciliation, leaving a lasting lesson for the world, that true greatness lies not only in victory, but in the courage to forgive, respect, and honor those who challenged you the most. As the applause faded, the weight of the moment lingered in the room. 40 years of rivalry, tension, and unspoken words had finally transformed into something far greater: understanding, respect, and reconciliation. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier had reminded everyone that true greatness isn't measured solely by victories or records. It's measured by the capacity to forgive, to honor, and to see beyond the fight. The audience remained silent, not from shock, but from awe. They had witnessed more than a reunion. They had witnessed a lesson in humanity. Ali, ever charismatic, spoke softly but deliberately. "Life isn't about how many times you punch someone or how many titles you hold. It's about the impact you leave, the respect you give, and the moments that define your character." Frazier nodded beside him, his expression calm yet profound. "For decades, people saw us as rivals. They watched every fight, analyzed every move, and debated who was the greatest. But the real lesson isn't in the ring, it's in what comes after. Respect, humility, and understanding outlast any title or trophy." The crowd absorbed the words. Some fans wiped tears from their eyes. Others whispered to friends, reflecting on their own relationships, their own rivalries, and the grudges they carried. The lesson was universal. Time heals wounds, forgiveness frees the soul, and respect is stronger than pride. Ali and Frazier continued their quiet conversation, laughing softly at memories from the past, not in mockery, but in shared humanity. Each anecdote, each glance, each gesture communicated more than words ever could. The cameras captured it all, but the energy in the room went beyond film. It was almost palpable, as if the air itself recognized the significance of what had occurred. Ali paused, turning toward the audience. "We fought in the ring," he said, "and we fought with the world watching. But some battles aren't won by punches. They're won by the courage to face the past and choose respect over resentment." Frazier added, "And some victories can't be measured in rounds or judges' scores. They're measured in moments like this, moments that define a lifetime." For those present, the message was clear. True strength is not only in victory, but in the humility to reconcile and the wisdom to honor those who challenged you most. Ali and Frazier had lived this lesson, and in doing so, they had offered the world a gift far greater than any fight could ever provide. As the reunion drew to a close, the two men walked together, side by side, waving gently to the crowd. Cameras captured the moment, but it was the human connection that resonated. Fans would share the footage, the quotes, and the emotions online, but nothing could truly replicate the feeling of witnessing history, of seeing respect triumph over decades of rivalry. Before leaving, Ali spoke one final time. "Remember, respect isn't reserved for the famous or the strong. It's shown to everyone, even when no one is watching. Because one day, the person you underestimated might become the one you admire most." Frazier smiled, adding, "And sometimes, the longest silence can lead to the most meaningful conversations. Forgiveness and respect take time, but they're worth every second." The room erupted in applause one last time. People stood, cheered, and reflected on what they had seen. Two of the greatest boxers the world had ever known had not only reconciled their past, but it left a timeless lesson for every human being that rivalry can transform into respect. Anger can transform into understanding, and history can teach more than any lesson in the ring. Type Reunite in the comments if you believe respect and humility define true greatness. Share where you're watching from. Let's honor every soul who values understanding over conflict. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier left that hall not just as champions, but as teachers of life's most important lesson, that true power lies in forgiveness, true courage lies in humility, and true legacy lies in the moments of reconciliation that echo far longer than any fight.